Hey, it's Nate with Pulse PEMF, and with me is one of our amazing ISRs, Joe LeHotay, and I've been
Hey,
so
Nate.
excited to get some time with you, Joe. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it. And it's great to see you on video. It's awesome.
Absolutely, likewise. This is a desire fulfilled. I've been watching you and following some of the interviews you've been doing and what you're posting on social media. It's been so good. And I've got a couple quotes and things that I've seen on your feed that we'll get to in a little bit. But first, we got to start with your origin story. How did you get connected with Pulse PEMF?
Yeah, I love that story. So as I tell most people, I was sitting minding my own business one day, like I always do, and my phone rings, and it was a buddy of mine from 20 years ago that I used to work with in one of my former positions, and I had been in the healthcare IT space primarily over 18 to 20 years in sales. Only worked for four different companies, but they were all acquired and I never got an exit. So I never got paid out, never got to retire, never got to go on a 6 month vacation. I always had to go to my next gig, if you will. So when the last one was about to be sold, and we all knew as salespeople, it was a small sales team, we were all going to be let go because the company buying us at the time was only buying our software. So we all started looking at opportunities. And I think that is one of the best things that's ever happened in my career because I got to look at a lot of interesting things under not a lot of pressure. So I had several months where I could talk to recruiters, look at job postings, look on the internet for different cool companies that I thought might be excellent and fun to work with. And probably, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 months into that process, I got a call from a buddy of mine, like I said, 20 years that I had known 20 years ago. And he asked me if I'd ever heard of PMF. And I actually had heard of it maybe 15 years before that. And I had known it was a good technology. People liked it. People were getting out of pain, getting good health and wellness results from it. And it was like under the radar at the time when I had first heard about it and even tried it. And so I told the guy, yeah, I mean, I know something about it. He said that he had met with Pulse at the time and had come down to Atlanta, talked with Paul and some of the other executives and leaders with Pulse, really liked the people, really liked the technology. He brought his very cynical ER doc sister-in-law with him who hates everything, basically. She loved it. She tried it. She loved it. He said that it did wonders for his frozen shoulder that he developed playing football for Duke years and years prior. He never had really any relief for that. So he was on board. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds really interesting, really cool and stuff. Let me know how it goes after a couple weeks. It sounds cool. Give me a call back. So he called me like a couple days later, and it wasn't a couple of weeks. And he said, hey, they just lost a rep that had moved out of a territory, and do you want to talk to Pulse? And I said, yeah, I'd love to talk to Pulse. Let's just have a conversation. And had an interview, had a conversation, and I've never looked back. It's a little over probably 7.5 years ago now. And it's the most fun I've ever had in my career. So thankful for, what would normally be viewed as, a total bummer. You're working in sales, you're making a pretty good salary, you're doing well, doing something that you've been doing for 18 years, the industry, blah, blah, blah. And now somebody comes and says, your company's up for sale. You're all going to be on the street. What do you do? And so super thankful that I was led into, an opportunity like this. And it's been great the whole time.
Come on. I love that. You're adapt and pivot, and then you didn't miss out
Right.
on this opportunity. So you jumped in because of what somebody told you about it. What did you experience in the first few weeks or months? Was there anything that, like an experience that glued you to the technology and you're like, this is it? This is what I've been looking for?
Yeah. Actually, the first time, no,
Okay.
I did not. I came down to Atlanta. I came to an advanced training that I was invited to. This was when we still had the trainings in Peachtree Corners. So there were probably, I don't know, 40, 50 people in there, from clients to new hires to existing reps and support people to management, everybody listening to speakers, getting an opportunity to first time experience the technology. And I sat in the chair. Somebody turned it on for me. Didn't know how to operate it, of course. First time, sat in the chair. Somebody put it on 7.8. They turned it up. I started to feel it. I said, okay, I feel it. They turned it up a little higher. I sat there for probably, 15, 20 minutes, I think, and got up, went through the rest of the meeting, left for the day. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was walking across the bridge through the woods that used to be at Peachtree Corners. If you've never been there, you don't know what I mean, but you know what I mean, back to the parking lot. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not sure what I just got into here. I mean, I know this is great for a lot of people. I don't feel much. And I got home and I started up anyway. I said to myself, I've seen enough testimonials from people. Shoot, my friend who introduced me to it changed his life as far as his shoulder goes. He's like, Joe, I'm putting stuff on the top shelf after 2 sessions. I mean, I haven't done that in 25 years, dude. And so I said, okay, maybe it's me. I'm just going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to jump into this with both feet. Well, after a couple of weeks of being on the technology, I got a system at home, started using it every day, and things started to change. So I never really had chronic pain of any real extreme, extreme pain. So it wasn't necessarily, oh, the pain has now been reduced by 50% or 80%, or it's gone. Right. I have 2 out of 10 where I used to be a 9 out of 10 all the time. So it didn't really do that. For me, it was more subtle things. It was better sleep. It was longer sleep because I didn't have to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night anymore. So I was 52 years old when this all started. And for, 7, 8 years, you could set your watch by 3 a.m. every morning for when Joe has to get up in the middle of the night and then go back to bed. And you never know if you're getting back to sleep, that kind of thing. So something like that. The way my body was resolving things that would occur. So give you an example, watching my son play golf. A lot of people who know me know Jacob plays golf. He's been playing since he was, this big. And I would always go out and watch him play golf. Well, when you watch golf, you basically, if you've never spectated on a golf tournament, this is what happens. You stand on the sidelines in the rough and you walk about 300 yards and you stand for 15 minutes. Then you walk about 200 more yards and then you stand for another 10 minutes or so. And then you repeat that process over 5-6 hours. And you're always standing like this on the side of a hill and walking on the sides of hills. My lower back used to get tight all the time watching him. And it would take like 3-4 days for me to resolve that pre-Pulse, pre-PMF. And I noticed after about 3 weeks of consistent use, I was out on the course with him one day. I got into the car, I drove home, and my back already felt better. And so just the ability, and then these things started just checking off in my mind, like, well, the middle of the night thing, that's nothing I ever imagined. I wasn't planning on that. I wasn't purposefully and intentionally pulsing to address that issue. The resiliency of the lower back, I wasn't pulsing specifically on the lower back necessarily. And so things just started to check off where I noticed these things over time. And as I've gone through this process, I've just noticed of a marked difference in just the way I think, the way I feel, the way my body responds to stress and stressful situations. I now have an Oura ring, so I'm able to track some things, and I've never tracked anything before. So now I'm looking at HRV, I'm looking at sleep, I'm looking at resting heart rate and these types of metrics where I've never looked at them before. So even more recently, I'm noticing those numbers as I start to look at them and start to intentionally work and address and kind of mindfully look at those areas. That Pulse is a phenomenal support tool, for those. So it's not really the house is burning down and I was able to put it out with Pulse. but it's over time, the things that I've noticed that Pulse can be. And this goes into something I talk about a lot. When you look at it as nutrition, not only as an aspirin, as a painkiller, as an acute, episode tool that you might use when something's wrong. So I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I noticed that on something you posted a few weeks ago, that it's more like a vitamin than an aspirin. It's not hiding anything. It's not masking anything. It's actually providing the raw material that our bodies need to function. I love that your experience may not have been that dramatic wow moment that everyone it's a viral video. It's the desire that everyone wants. We want better sleep, we want more energy, and we want more mental clarity. You stepped into it without even necessarily understanding that's what you were going to be stepping into. And I think sometimes we look for those wow testimonials and forget that that doesn't diminish the everyday improvements that we get to experience when we're consistent with our pulsing schedules. I love that. And I have to ask then, there is at least one or two, right? Top like wow testimonials that you could possibly share with us today.
Yeah, and it still might not be the answer you expect.
Sure.
Because I've been around this a while, I know Pulse has existed or PMF in general has existed for decades, if not maybe a century, in use on people and animals. So the testimonials that you hear all the time, ranging from, I mean, the the sort of, I'm not going to say ho hum, because somebody who's dealing with this, obviously it's not ho hum, but they become common. When you hear pain reduction, it becomes commonplace. When you hear someone who, is now able to do something maybe with their kids or with their grandkids that they weren't able to do before, because
Right.
now they have that healing energy in that specific issue that was bothering them. Those are wonderful, of course, but they are very common. And so, yeah, I mean, the ones that aren't so common are the chronic bedwetter that
Mm-hmm.
didn't wet the bed after 4 nights of using Pulse, the person who didn't have to have hip surgery after 3 months of using Pulse, the person who lost the need to use their walker. They had neuropathy in their lower legs and feet, like 70-year-old person who used a walker for years and is now calling me, and you could tell she's getting emotional on the other side of the phone saying, I'm not sure how this actually happened, but I just wanted to say and tell you that it happened. So those stories are, of course, wonderful and grateful. Someone who got pregnant at 48. Oh my goodness.
Come on.
Please tell me about that.
Come
Okay.
on.
Oh, hey, are you enjoying this video? Well, be sure to subscribe to our channel for the latest information on Pulse PEMF and tips on how to live the optimized life. Also, leave a comment below or a question. Our team reads and responds to each one. And be sure to take a couple seconds and click that like button. It really helps this channel get the good news to more people. Now, back to the video, and I'm going to get back to my pulsing session.
So it sounds like I'm bragging about the technology when I say all those things. Really, what I tell people is I'm more bragging about the body's innate ability to heal and adapt. Really, that's all the body does, is heal and adapt to any situation, or at least it attempts to. Doesn't always have enough energy or the right environment or circumstances to maybe pull it off as quickly or maybe as thoroughly as we might expect, imagine, or hope, or maybe that it did when we were younger. And now that we're older, it does it a little slower. Well, when you replace the energy and support the body in that need for that energy to be able to do those things, all those things start to occur in a much better, more optimal way. You see, every process in the body runs on energy. If there wasn't any energy in the body, nothing would really function. And so when you talk about Pulse PMF as a nutrient for the body, it's not just hyperbole. It is like vitamins, minerals, fats, proteins, carbohydrates, antioxidants, all of these things, water that we ingest. it's not just food, y'all. It's other forms of nutrition as well. Nutrition shouldn't just be relegated and thought of and defined as stuff you put in your mouth. It's stuff you're exposed to, like sunlight and ground and air and other things and electricity, frankly,
Yes.
because so much of the body runs on these things and nothing actually happens without energy supporting it. And this is just an easy exogenous source of energy on demand that we need from time to time. Why? Because in today's environment, our cellular voltage is being suppressed by the food. That what is actually in our food these days, what's actually in our water these days, what's actually in the air or the
Come on.
soil
Yep.
these days, what's actually in the environment with all the screens and things and tech and things we put on our head that are having an impact on our cellular voltage and suppressing those things. It becomes more important as evolution, society evolves, quote unquote, and gets better, quote unquote, and
Right.
easier, quote unquote, and more convenient, quote unquote, to support your body with natural forms of energy to help these processes. And if you read, a great book that's out right now called Good Energy by Dr. Casey Means, she's a Stanford trained ENT surgeon who no longer operates on patients because now she's into mitochondrial and metabolic health. And so what she's studying is the fact that most, if not all, of the chronic diseases that people die from in the US and in a lot of the world too, but focusing on the US for now, most of those people and most of those deaths are related to metabolic conditions due to the mitochondria in the cell, the stuff we always look at it here at Pulse, in the cell not having enough energy. Your cells aren't happy. There's lots of reasons for that. We just touched on some of them, but there's a big reason why you need to replace that energy with something like Pulse. Get your body back into the condition that, naturally it was closer to 100, 150, 200 years ago before all this started happening. These things at best are compromising our cellular voltage. At worst, are sabotaging our cellular voltage. And it comes time when you have to do something about that.
So well said. So when you're talking about applying energy as a supplement, which of our amazing accessories is your favorite, and what position is there one that you do every day? Like, this is my go-to position?
Actually, yeah. And I switch between the 3 sizes of square pads to do this, whatever kind of mood or whatever I'm kind of feeling a vibe for. But I would say for the most part, it's either the large or the medium square pad. Lying down on the bed first thing in the morning, 16 minutes. Don't ask me why it's 16 minutes. This is just what I've sort of intuitively started to get into. It works in my schedule. It gets my day off to a quick start. Underneath the head, right into the occipital, energy into the brain, and then sort of going down a couple inches every few minutes to get kind of my whole cervical and upper spine and scaps and shoulders and neck, just loosening up that, sleepy time bed and pillow tightness that a lot of us wake up with in the morning. That's my routine in the morning, right before I jump out next to my mailbox, watch the sunrise. Then I hit the coffee button, maybe do some red light. And then I do another probably 40, 45 minutes just sitting in the chair reading. So I usually get about an hour of pulsing in the first 2 hours that I'm awake every day.
I love it. I'm going to have to try that. I've been hearing more and more testimonials about pulsing the brain and pulsing the occipital region. So that's definitely something that I've been looking into more. I'm excited about that, especially if you're not getting enough sleep, because the glymphatic system is activated while you're asleep. And so if you're not sleeping, then your brain has no detoxification system. So that sounds like a great way to start the day. With that being said, you're very articulate in how you communicate this. It's very clear that you're not having to dig to express the revelation and the understanding that you have of this modality and how the body adapts to it, because you're absolutely right. We need to brag on how the body has this innate holistic understanding on where the energy needs to go and what to do with it. But I saw a quote on your LinkedIn feed that I have to read, and I would love for you to just speak into how you got to this level of boldness. So on your post, you said, and I quote, "In my opinion, there are two types of people in this world: those who rely on Pulse and those who should rely on Pulse. If you don't know what I mean, please do yourself and your family or your wellness business a big favor today and contact me to learn more. You think I talk big? I'm ready to back it up anytime you are." End quote. Joe, I love it. I love that measure of boldness.
It's true. It's true.
Obviously,
Yeah.
you can say that now because you're 7 years in. You've become more intuitive and discerning on how to apply the accessories. But what do you think was one or two of the main reasons you've got to that level of boldness?
Yeah. Thank you for asking me about that. And I agree. It does. I mean, if I were to read a quote like that, I wouldn't necessarily believe it, frankly. But hopefully I'd have a chance to speak with the person who wrote it, and that way I'd be able to call them out and ask questions and things. So I really appreciate that, Nate.
Yeah.
The number one reason I wanted to write it was I've realized over the years that PMF is a very broad market in terms of products, capabilities, sensation, experience, results, cost. There's lots of variables in this market, and it's quite a bit confusing to the average consumer. Having said that, I've determined, and this is an estimation, it's not hard science, that probably 90% of PEMF users in the world, consumers of PEMF, are using a product completely different than Pulse. So they don't know, just because they've tried PEMF, they don't know what Pulse can do. They don't know what it feels like. They don't know what the results can be like. They don't know how it can change your life. So that's one of the reasons why I wrote it in that fashion, because I'm trying to get into conversations with people who think they know about PEMF and maybe haven't had that same impact that I'm writing about right there, And so the other thing is that no one knows, very few people know what peak cellular energy feels like. And so people come into Pulse, people come into wellness in general, trying to solve a specific problem. And when that problem is solved, they probably reduce their focus, or at least their intensity, on trying to optimize things in their life. They check that box. I feel better. Let's move on. This biohacking, this wellness thing, this lifestyle of wellness and optimization. Yeah, it's okay for some people, but I solved my problem. And so let me just continue on from there. And so I like to have conversations around building long-term resiliency from a peak cellular energy standpoint. And we talked about reasons why people don't necessarily have that in their life every day right now without something like Pulse. And so that's really, another reason why I think I like to write like that and be bold like that. And the third reason would be, and you said something like to this effect earlier, so I want to make sure I didn't miss it, is that, in any form of life that you're in, any walk of life, whether you're a business person, an athlete, a doctor, a teacher, a parent, a student, whatever you do in life, in order to succeed, you have to perform at a certain level. Maybe that's physically, maybe that's mentally, maybe that's a combination, but you have to perform at a high level. In order to perform at your highest level, you have to train at a high level. And so, again, it could be physically, it could be mentally. In order to train at your highest level, people are starting to pay more attention to the fact that you have to recover at an optimal level. So
Yes.
In order to recover at an optimal level, people are now starting to realize more and more that you have to have the right kind of rest. You have to rest optimally in order to recover the best. The piece that most people miss, and the fifth finger in my little thesis here, is in order to rest optimally, you need energy. And you touched on this before, how the lymphatics are trying to work on flushing certain things while you're sleeping. Well, there's a lot of things happening while you're sleeping. And guess what? Without enough energy, they don't happen as well as they could. And so get yourself the right type and amount of cellular, mitochondrial, metabolic energy for every process in the body to work better. Then you can rest better. Then you can recover better. Then you can train better. Then you can perform better. And then you will be more successful. That's my 5-finger mantra about the foundational need for energy that leads to success in any walk of life.
I love that. That is absolutely brilliant. What you said about the energy capacity reaching its peak so that you're living at that optimal level at all times. Because a lot of times people view PEMF as the Swiss Army knife, right? You're addressing a primary or tertiary issue and you're focusing on that. And then when that's taken care of, then you're like, woohoo, that was great. But PEMF is for everyday use. It's for building that, what you just said, that optimal cellular energy capacity. So everything's functioning at the highest level that it's supposed to, instead of us settling. We've don't, and that maybe that's some of the problem in the past is we've been targeting specific issues or trying to get pain down. But what does someone look like when they're living in like the ultimate energy capacity? That person would provoke everyone else to jealousy, right? They would be like, I want that life.
Yes. You would never want to go back to your life prior to that. And so that's what I'm hoping to educate people on. And yes, most people come for those immediate results. Hey, look at my story. I got on and I didn't necessarily have something burning that I needed to solve immediately. So I didn't really think, maybe it's not really doing anything. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. But over time, using it consistently, I'm a different person than I was. And without getting into some of the not house burning issues, but things that were in the background, some of which I discussed earlier, and other things too, that have been resolved, minimized, have been put in my rearview mirror. And I'm a different person. My family, some of the things they've dealt with, my wife and my son Jacob, some of the things they've dealt with, they are different people. And so if you were to try this, take it from me, if you were to try this and you didn't have a revelationary experience in your first 30-minute session, look at it as nutrition. Look at it as something that you're really not going to get with the convenience that you can get this, with the access that you can get this. Not all of us have lifestyles where we can watch the sunrise every day, where we can, drink and eat exactly what we want because we're not traveling. We're not, dealing with work stress. We're not dealing with jet lag. We're not dealing with relationships that aren't optimal, let's just say, and so all of these things in our environment and in our lifestyle are sabotaging and suppressing our body's energy. And so this is something that can help build a foundation to build a defense and long-term resiliency, even though those things aren't going to change. We're still going to have hectic lifestyles. We're still going to eat the wrong things from time to time and not sleep, as much as we think we should, or with the right, type of rest and recovery. And so it just becomes something that is foundational and necessary in someone's life. And I need people to start thinking along those lines, is that this is something that should never be done without, if you can possibly help it.
It's about creating a new standard of expectation for our lifestyles that we've been settling for down here so long. We're like, well, this is just normal. But when you start living in that pulsed life, it starts, your standard it keeps getting raised. And now when you come back down here, you're like, oh, no, I'm not going back because I'm used to this now. And so getting the world to see that so that they want that experience as well. So I'll end with this. Paul tells me often over the last few years that one of the most important things you can do is just constantly pulse yourself. You can't ever be an expert to help someone else with their body if you have not invested the time on experimenting on yourself. You need to know what it feels like. You need to know how little micro adjustments affect the angle and the penetration of depth. So there's just so many things that we must learn on our own by experimenting on ourselves. Is there anything that you would add to that, on just how we get to that level of becoming more efficient with how we pulse others?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest, most important key to success with PEMF. Whether you're a personal, PEMF pulser that you own a unit at home, or you go to an office and get it done, or you're running a business and you're offering this and you're selling packages of this and you're building a business around it, the number one key to success is pulsing yourself. Whoever is going to be the one sharing this with others needs to be a product of it. Why is that? Because after you become a product of it, you will have the same conviction that Paul has, that I have, that others have, that are on a steady diet and a steady routine of pulse. I call it, yes, hashtag the pulse life. Exactly. You want to be in that mode. And if you're, heaven forbid, you're selling this in your business to people, the first time somebody comes to you and says, yeah, I don't think it worked for me. I tried it once and, it didn't work for me. The first time you hear that, you know how discouraged you're going to be? But if you're using it in your own life and you have those experimental results and, the trial and error, cycles that you go through, and the quick wins and the slower, more consistent, wins, that kind of thing, to talk about and share with people, you're going to be discouraged the first time you hear somebody object to that. And not that you hear that very often, because a lot of people will receive pretty quick results when they get on Pulse. Even in their first session, a lot of times I've heard people get great results even in their first session. But certainly in their first 3 to 10 to 20 sessions, if they're giving this a go, if they're putting some time, effort, energy, maybe some finances, yes, into this as well, it's an investment in their present wellness and absolutely in their future resiliency and long-term wellness. And so that's really the bottom line of really everything I train on.
Well, thank you for becoming that example, because it's very clear and consistent in your communication, whether you're being interviewed on someone else's podcast or whatever you're posting on social media or LinkedIn. It's very clear. Your passion is only growing. There's no diminishing. So it creates intrigue in any onlooker. They'll be like, man, he really believes in this. So obviously he's seeing something. The proof is in the pudding with you, Joe LeHotay. So thank you so much for this opportunity to let us glean from your experience. And for all those who will be watching this later, I encourage you, follow Joe on LinkedIn and social media, and check out some of the interviews that he's already done with other podcasters and biohackers. You can find that on his social media streams. Joe, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nate. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for watching this video by Pulse PEMF. For more information about us or to schedule a personalized demo with our technology, click the link in the description below. Also, be sure to follow us on social media, especially YouTube, for inspiring stories, cutting-edge wellness tips, and exciting industry updates that will enhance your life.